"We're going to die," one of the Navy SEALs said, staring at the windows like they were counting down his last minutes. Outside, the Alaskan storm was already swallowing the world. White-out snow, screaming wind, the helipad lights flickering like they were about to go out forever. Inside the military hospital, there were only 9 people left. 2 doctors, 2 nurses, 5 SEALs, and 2 of them were bleeding. The pilot was dead, taken by fever in the cold so brutal it killed faster than bullets. Every call for help failed. Radios were static. Sat ones were dead. And even if they reached someone, no aircraft could fly into this storm. One SEAL laughed bitterly. "We're trapped." "That's it." That's when the rookie nurse stepped forward. "Ava, quiet, blonde, come. I can fly the Jayhawk," she said. The SEAL stared at her, then laughed harder until she looked at the team leader and said one sentence using a unit name that wasn't supposed to exist. And every Navy SEAL in that room went pale. Before we begin, if you love intense medical military survival stories like this, take 2 seconds to comment where you're watching from and hit subscribe. Now, let me take you to a frozen military hospital in Alaska where the storm didn't just shut the lights off, it shut the world down. The first thing I noticed wasn't the snow. It was the sound. Alaska doesn't snow like the movies. It howls. The wind hit the hospital windows like fists, making the glass rattle in its frame. The power flickered twice, the lights dimming just long enough to make everyone look up. Then the generator caught and the hall went back to that harsh white glow, the kind that makes people look sick, even when they're fine. It was past midnight, night shift, and St. Coldridge Military Hospital. This tiny outpost tucked into the frozen edge of nowhere had maybe 9 souls inside it. 2 doctors, 2 nurses, and 5 Navy SEALs who looked like they'd walked straight out of a nightmare and into fluorescent light. 2 of them were injured, not dramatic movie injuries, the real kind. One had a deep gash under his ribs where the dressing was already soaking through. The other was pale, shivering, and fighting to stay awake like sleep would take him somewhere he couldn't come back from. The rest stood in the hallway like guard dogs, rifles slung, eyes scanning corners out of habit. They weren't here for comfort. They were here because the storm had forced their helicopter down earlier, and now the storm had come back to finish the job. The SEALs tried every radio channel they had. Nothing. Static. A satellite phone was pulled out like a last prayer. The backup battery pack was useless. The wind outside was so thick it felt like it had weight. Even if a call went through, nobody could fly in this. Everyone in the building knew it. Nobody said it out loud at first because saying it made it real. The head doctor, Dr. Harmon, kept pretending it was normal. He spoke too fast, gave orders that didn't matter, checked charts like charts could stop a blizzard. But I saw the way his hands shook when he reached for a pen. And I saw the way the SEAL leader watched him, expression flat, already calculating what it would take to keep everyone alive if the walls stopped being walls. Then one of the SEALs, tall, broad exec, crusted with melted snow, looked down the hall toward the hangar access door and asked a question so casual it chilled the whole room. "Where's the pilot?" Nobody answered. The older nurse, Mara, glanced at the floor like she'd dropped something. Dr. Harmon cleared his throat. "He passed earlier." The SEAL leader's eyes narrowed. "Passed how?" Harmon hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any report ever could. "Fever," he admitted. "Hypothermia complications. We tried." The SEAL leader cut him off with a slow nod. Not anger. Worse, acceptance. Like a man hearing the last bolt slide into place on a door he'll never open again. That's when the mood changed. The SEALs stopped moving like visitors and started moving like men preparing for a siege. They checked doors. They checked windows. They counted rounds. One of them dragged a heavy cabinet in front of the main entrance like it was routine. Dr. Harmon watched them with the wrong kind of pride, like they were security guards hired for the night. He didn't understand what I understood immediately. SEALs don't prepare like that unless they believe something is coming. Not just the storm, something else. Something that uses storms as cover. The outpost was isolated. Supply routes ran nearby. And in Alaska, there are people who move through whiteouts like they were born in them. I stayed quiet near the nurse's station, watching Ava. She was the youngest one there, the rookie. Blonde hair pulled tight, light blue scrubs under a heavy winter parka that looked too big for her shoulders. Calm blue eyes, no panic, no shaking hands. She was restocking gauze, checking for fluids by counting morphine vials like this was just another shift, like the world outside wasn't trying to erase the building off the map. The SEALs barely noticed her. One of them even muttered, not quietly enough. Great, a rookie nurse. Perfect. Another snorted. If this place goes down, she'll freeze in 10 minutes. Ava didn't react. She just kept working. But I saw her pause for half a second when the generator hummed too low. She listened to it the way pilots listen to engines. Then Dr. Harmon finally said what everyone had been circling. We can't stay here. His voice cracked on the last word. If the generator fails, if the heating dies, we won't last the night. The SEAL leader stared at him like he just arrived at the obvious 5 hours late. There's nowhere to go. One of the SEALs snapped. No planes can fly in this. Another SEAL, injured, leaning against the wall, laughed once, bitter. So we wait. We freeze or we get shot if someone finds us first. Nobody corrected him because nobody could. Even Mara looked like she might cry. That's when the SEAL leader exhaled hard and said it like a final sentence. We're going to die here. Ava's head lifted, not dramatically, just enough to show she'd been listening the whole time. She walked forward, slow, steady, like she didn't need permission to enter the conversation. There's a helicopter, she said. The SEALs turned toward her like she'd insulted them. The leader's eyes narrowed. Yeah, he said. There is, and the pilot is dead. Ava didn't blink. Then we don't need the pilot, she answered. One of the SEALs barked out a laugh. What is this? I kind of motivational speech. Another shook his head. Sweetheart, this isn't a TikTok. This is Alaska. Ava's voice stayed calm. I can fly it. The hall went quiet for a full second. Then the laughter came harder, sharper, desperate. Because fear makes men cruel when they don't know where to put it. But Ava didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked at the SEAL leader and said almost casually, I learned on a unit that didn't get pilots. We learned to take the controls ourselves. SEAL Team 9 flight cross training. The laughter died instantly. The SEAL leader's face went blank. Not confused, not amused. Blank like someone had just spoken a name that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. His breath caught. And for the first time all night he looked afraid. Not of the storm, not of freezing, but of her. And in that moment, I realized the storm wasn't the real danger. It was what Ava's words had just brought back. The hallway stayed frozen after Ava said it. Not because anyone believed her, because the name she dropped hit the SEALs like a flashbang in a small room. The leader's jaw tightened so hard I saw the muscle jump near his ear. The injured one against the wall stopped breathing for a second like his lungs forgot how. And then the skepticism came back heavier this time, like anger wearing a mask. SEAL Team 9, one of them repeated slow. That unit doesn't exist. Ava didn't argue. She didn't smile. She just held his stare calm as a monitor beep. It existed, she said. And it buried more people than the ocean. That was the first time the doctors truly looked at her. Not like a rookie. Like a locked door they'd been leaning on without realizing. The SEAL leader stepped closer. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His tone was controlled, the way men sound when they're trying not to break something. What's your name, nurse? Ava answered. Ava. He watched her for a long second. Last name? She hesitated just a breath, and that tiny pause made the air feel sharp. Ava Carter, she said. The leader's eyes narrowed, and I could tell he was searching memory like a database. One of the other SEALs, younger and cockier, scoffed. So what, Carter? You're saying you can just hop in a Blackhawk and fly out like it's Uber? Ava's gaze slid to him, then to the hangar access door. It's not a Blackhawk, she corrected. It's a Jayhawk variant. And no, I can't fly out like it's easy. Well, but I can fly out if the choices die here. The injured SEAL coughed, and the sound was wet. Dr. Harmon looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the courage to speak over the men with guns. That's when the generator stuttered. Not fully, just enough for the lights to flicker and the monitors to chirp. A soft, ugly dip in the hum that made every person in the building instinctively tense. The heating vents exhaled a breath of lukewarm air and then nothing for a second. 1 second. That was all. But it was the kind of second that tells you the world is running out of time. Mara, the older nurse, whispered, "No, no, no, no." Dr. Harmon rushed to the maintenance panel like he could fix it with his hands. The SEAL leader didn't move. He just stared at the ceiling like he was listening to the building's heartbeat. "How long do we have?" he asked. Ava answered before anyone else could. "If it drops again, the generator's going to fail within the hour. Then we'll lose heat. Then we'll lose lights. Then we'll lose people." She said it like she was reading weather, like she'd seen it before. The SEAL leader finally nodded once. "All right," he said. "Show me." They moved fast after that, but not in a messy way, in a disciplined way. The SEALs took positions without being told. 1 stayed with the injured men. 2 covered the main entrance. 1 checked the windows. The leader followed Ava down the stairwell toward the hangar corridor, boots thewing against concrete. Dr. Harmon tried to follow, but the SEAL leader held up a hand. "Doc, stay with your patients," he said. It wasn't disrespect, it was triage. Harmon froze, swallowed, and stayed behind. Ava didn't look back. She walked like she already knew the route, like she'd walked it before in the dark. The corridor leading to the hangar smelled like oil and cold metal, and the wind scream got louder the closer they got to the outer doors. The SEAL leader leaned in slightly as they walked. "If you're lying," he said quietly, "I won't have time to be polite about it." Ava didn't blink. "Good," she said. "Neither will the storm." The hangar doors were half frosted over, the edges rimmed in ice. The Jayhawk sat there like a sleeping animal. Matte dark paint, rotors, still medical evac markings on the side. A dead pilot's jacket was folded on a chair near the maintenance table, and that small detail made my stomach turn. The SEAL leader stared at it for a second too long. Then he forced his eyes back to Ava. "You ever flown in this?" he asked. Ava walked up to the helicopter and ran her gloved hand along the fuselage like she was greeting something familiar. "I've flown worse," she said. The SEAL leader let out a humorless breath. "Worse than an Alaskan ice storm." Ava finally looked at him. "Worse than weather," she said. "Worse than people." And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in his expression. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. Like he'd met that kind of calm before on nights that didn't end clean. Ava climbed up onto the side step, pulled herself into the cockpit, and the SEAL leader followed her in. The cockpit lights were dead. The batteries were low. The whole helicopter felt like it was holding its breath. Ava reached for switches like she'd done it 1,000 times. She checked fuel. She checked hydraulics. She checked the engine intake for ice buildup. The SEAL leader watched her hands. And I swear he wasn't watching for competence. He was watching for muscle memory. He wanted to see if her body knew the machine before her mouth did. "What's your flight time?" he asked. Ava didn't answer immediately. She flipped a breaker and a small panel light blinked alive. "Enough," she said. He leaned closer, voice low. "That's not an answer." Ava's jaw tightened. "They didn't log my hours," she said. "They buried them." The SEAL leader stared at her, and I felt the temperature drop inside the cockpit even though it was already freezing. "Who trained you?" he asked. Ava paused for the first time. Then she said a name. Not a famous name. Not a dramatic one, just a simple one. And the SEAL leader's face changed so fast it was like someone punched him. His eyes went glassy for half a second, then hard. "He's dead," he whispered. Ava didn't look away. "I know," she said. "He died making sure I could land." Before the leader could respond, the hangar door shuddered. Not from wind, from impact. A dull boom echoed down the corridor. Then another. The SEAL leader's head snapped toward the sound. His hand went to his rifle instinctively. Ava didn't flinch. She just kept working, flipping another switch, trying to coax power from a dying system. The boom came again, closer this time. Like someone testing the door, the SEAL leader keyed his radio. Static. He tried again. Nothing. The storm was swallowing every signal. He looked at Ava and for the first time his voice carried real urgency. Tell me
believed
we
her,
can get this
because
bird
the
up.
name she dropped
A's
hit the
fingers
seals
moved
like a
faster.
flashbang in a
If
small
the battery
room.
holds, she
The
said,
leader's jaw
if the fuel
tightened
lines
so
aren't
hard I
frozen.
saw the muscle jump
Another
near his
crash
ear.
hit the outer
The
doors,
injured
and
one
this
against
time
the
I heard
wall
metal
stopped
bend.
breathing for a
Ava's
second, like
eyes
his
lifted
lungs
to the
forgot
windshield,
how.
and she said
And then
something
the
so
skepticism
calm it
came
scared
back
me
heavier
more than
this
panic
time,
would have.
like anger
They
wearing
found
a
us.
mask.
The
SEAL
leader
team
knocked
knocked
out of the
one of
cockpit
them
and
repeated
moved
slow.
to the hangar window
That
slit.
unit doesn't
He
exist.
peered through the frost.
Ava didn't argue.
Outside in the
She
white
didn't
out,
smile.
shapes moved.
She just held his
dark
stare calm
silhouettes,
as a monitor
not
beep.
military,
It
not
existed,
rescue.
she said.
Too
And it
coordinated.
buried more people
Too
than
many.
the ocean. He couldn't
That was
see
the first
faces,
time the
but he
doctors
could see
truly
rifles.
looked at her.
He could
Not
see
like
the
a
way
rookie.
they spread out, like a locked
Using
door
the
they'd been
storm like
leaning
cover
on without
like they'd done it
realizing.
before.
The SEAL leader
Smugglers,
stepped closer.
the kind that
He
used
didn't
remote
raise his
storms
voice
to move contraband
He didn't need
and disappear.
His tone
The
was
kind
controlled.
that didn't care if
the
a
way
hospital
men sound
existed
when
in
they're
their
trying
way.
not to break
The
something.
SEAL leader
What's
turned
your
back
name?
toward Ava.
Nurse?
And
Ava
the tone of
answered.
his voice
Ava.
changed from
He
testing a
watched
rookie
her for a
nurse
long
to speaking
second.
to someone who
Last
might
name?
be the only chance
She
left.
hesitated just a
How
breath.
fast can you spin
and that
up?
tiny
He
pause
asked.
made the air
Ava
feel
looked
sharp.
at the dead panels.
Ava Carter,
the
she
weak
said.
battery.
The leader's
frozen
eyes
air.
narrowed.
Then
and
I
she
could
looked
tell
him
he
in
was
the eye.
searching memory
Fast
like a
enough,
database.
she said.
But
One
you're
of the
going
other
to have to
SEALs,
buy me time.
younger and cockier,
And right as she
scoffed.
said it,
The hangar door
Carter?
buckled inward
You're
with a
saying
scream
you can
of
just hop
steel,
in a Black
and the
Hawk and
first
fly
armed
out like it's
shadow
Uber?
stepped inside.
Ava's gaze
If you
slid
were
to
trapped
him,
in that
then
hospital,
to the hangar
would you
access
trust
door.
Ava and
It's
get on
not
the
a Black
helicopter,
Hawk, she
or would you
corrected.
think it's a
It's
suicide
a
mission?
Jayhawk variant.
Comment. And
I'm
no,
flying
I
or I'm
can't fly
staying.
out like it's easy.
The hangar door
Well,
didn't open
but I
like
can
a
fly
normal
out
door.
if the choices
It
die
failed.
here.
Metal
The injured
screamed,
seal coughed,
hinges
and the
snapped,
sound was
and
wet.
the storm shoved
Dr.
the
Harmon
slab
looked
inward
like he
like
wanted
it
to
wanted
say
something,
inside, too,
but couldn't find the
first
courage to
smuggler
speak over
stepped
the men
through
with
with his
guns.
rifle up.
That's when the
Goggles iced
generators
at the
stuttered.
edges,
Head
not
turning
fully,
slow like
just
he was
enough for the
tasting the
lights
room.
to flicker
Two
and the
more
monitors to
followed,
chirp.
then a fourth,
A soft,
moving clean,
ugly dip in the hum
spaced
that
out,
made
not
every
panicked.
person in the building
These weren't drunk
instinctively
idiots
tense.
looking for pills.
The heating vents
They were here
exhaled
for
a breath
something
of lukewarm
specific.
air, and
The
then
SEAL
nothing
leader
for a
didn't
second.
shout.
He didn't give a
second.
heroic
That was
warning.
all. But
He
it was the
simply
kind
raised
of
his
second
rifle
that tells
and
you the
fired
world
two
is
controlled
running out of
shots,
time.
so sharp
Mara,
they
the
sounded
older
like a
nurse,
judge's
whispered,
gavel.
No,
The
no,
first
no, no.
smuggler dropped.
Dr. Harmon
The second
rushed to the
spun and
maintenance
tried to
panel
return
like he could
fire,
fix it
but
with
the
his
SEAL
hands.
was already shifting
SEAL
position,
leader didn't move.
using the helicopter's
He
landing
just stared
skids
at the
as cover
ceiling
like
like
he
he'd
was
been
listening
listening
to
to
the
them.
building's heartbeat.
Ava stayed in the cockpit.
How long do we have?
Her hands didn't
He
shake.
asked. She
Ava
flipped a
answered
switch
before
watched
anyone
a
else
weak
could.
panel light blink,
If it drops
and
again,
whispered under
the
her
generator's
breath,
going to
"Come
fail
on,
within
and
the hour.
don't die on me
Then
now.
we'll lose heat.
The
Then we'll
firefight
lose
turned the
lights.
hangar into a
Then we'll
nightmare
lose
in
people.
seconds. She
Bullets
said it like she
sparked
was
off
reading
concrete,
weather,
like
chewing
she'd
little
seen it
bites out of the
before.
floor.
The SEAL
One of the
leader
smugglers
finally nodded
fired
once.
high and hit the
All right,
overhead
he
lights.
said.
Glass
Show me.
raining down like
They moved
glittering
fast
ice.
after that,
The
but
SEALs
not in a
moved
messy
like
way,
they rehearsed
in a disciplined
this exact
way.
room, even
The
though they
SEALs
hadn't.
took positions
Two of them
without being
pushed
told.
left toward the
One
maintenance bay.
stayed with the injured
One
men.
stayed near the hangar
Two covered
entrance
the
to
main
prevent
entrance.
a full rush.
One checked the
The
windows.
injured SEAL,
The
the
leader
one who could
followed
barely
Ava
stand
down
the stairwell
dragged
toward the
himself
hangar
behind
corridor,
a fuel crate
boots
and
spewing
still
against
managed to cover the
concrete.
corridor with his
Dr.
rifle.
Harmon tried to
Like
follow,
pure
but the
spite,
SEAL
was
leader
holding
held
his
up a
spine
hand.
together.
Doc,
Ava heard
stay with
every
your
shot
patient
through the thin
he
cockpit
said.
glass.
It wasn't
and she
disrespect,
hated herself
it was
for the thought that
triage.
slipped in.
Harmon
If they
froze,
die,
swallowed,
I'll be alone
and
in
stayed
here.
behind. She shoved
Ava
it
didn't
away
look back.
and forced her eyes
She walked
back
like
to the
she
instrument
already
panel.
knew the route,
Battery
like
voltage
she'd walked
low,
it before in the
starter
dark.
struggling,
The corridor
wind
leading
rocking
to the
bird
hangar
like a
smelled
giant
like
hand.
oil and cold
She
metal,
tried again,
and the wind scream
the engine
got louder
coughed
the
once,
closer they got to the
twice,
outer doors.
then nothing.
The SEAL
Ava
leader
climbed out of the
leaned in
cockpit
slightly
for
as
half
they
a
walked.
second, jumped
If you're
down,
lying,
and
he
ran
said
to the
quietly,
maintenance table.
I won't
Her
have time
gloves
to be
slapped
polite
against
about
the
it.
cold metal as she
Ava
yanked
didn't
open a
blink.
drawer,
Good,
grabbing a
she
de-icing spray
Neither
can
will
and
the
a small
storm.
toolkit. The hangar
She
doors
moved
were
fast,
half-frosted
but not
over,
messy,
the edges
like she'd
rimmed
done
in
this
ice.
in the dark before.
The Jayhawk
The
sat
SEAL
there like
leader
a
caught
sleeping
sight of
animal.
her and barked,
Matt Dark
Nurse,
paint,
get
rotors,
back in the bird.
Still medical
Ava
evac
snapped
markings
back
on the
without
side.
even looking at him.
A dead pilot's
If I don't
jacket
clear
was
the intake,
folded on a
we're
chair
not
near
flying
the maintenance
anywhere.
table.
And
That
that's
was
the small detail
anyone
made my
heard her
stomach
raise
turn.
her voice.
The SEAL
It
leader
wasn't
stared
fear,
at it
it
for
was
a second
authority.
too long. She
Then
sprinted
he
to the
forced his
engine
eyes
intake
back to
panel,
Ava.
popped it,
You ever
and the
flown
wind
in this?
punched her in the
He
face
asked.
so hard it
Ava
stole her
walked up
breath.
to the helicopter
Ice
and ran her
encrusted gloved
inside like
hand
a choke
along the
collar.
fuselage like
She
was
sprayed,
greeting something
scraped,
familiar,
and worked with
"I've
fingers
flown
that
worse,"
were already going
she
numb.
said.
Behind
the SEAL
her,
leader
a
let out a
smuggler slipped
humorless
around
breath.
the right side of the
Worse
hangar,
than an
trying to
Alaskan
flank
ice
the
storm.
SEALs.
Ava
Ava
finally
didn't see
looked
him,
at him,
but the
worse
K9
than
handler
weather,
SEAL,
she said.
yes, the one
Worse
who'd
than
been
people.
quiet all night
And
did.
for the first
He
time,
fired once.
I saw a flicker
the
of
smuggler
something
folded.
in his expression.
Then the SEAL
Not
shouted
trust,
something
not
that made
yet, but
Ava's
recognition
stomach drop.
Like
They're
he'd
not
met
just
that
coming
kind of
in.
calm before
They're
on nights
circling
that
the
didn't end
hospital.
clean. Outside,
Ava climbed
the
up onto
storm
the
hit
side
everything,
step,
but it
pulled
couldn't
herself
hide
into the
sound.
cockpit,
More
and the
boots,
SEAL
more
leader
shouting.
followed her in.
The smugglers were
cockpit lights
splitting,
were dead,
some hitting the
the
hangar,
batteries were
some
low.
moving toward
The
the main
whole
hospital
helicopter
wing.
felt like it was
Ava's
holding its
mind
breath.
did the math instantly.
Ava reached for switches
2 doctors,
like she'd done it
2
1,000
nurses,
times.
5 SEALs.
She checked fuel.
2 injured. She
A
checked
generator that was
hydraulics.
already dying.
She checked
and
the
now
engine
armed
intake
men
for ice
inside the
buildup.
building.
The SEAL
Dr.
leader
Harmon
watched
and
her
Marlowe
hands,
were up there with
and I
patients
swear
who
he
couldn't
wasn't
even
watching
run.
for competence.
Ava's chest
He was
tightened,
watching for
but she
muscle
forced
memory.
her breathing down.
He wanted to see if
Panic
her body
wastes
knew the
oxygen
machine
before her mouth
Panic
did.
makes mistakes.
What's your flight
She
time?
snapped the
He
intake
asked.
panel shut and
Ava
ran
didn't
back
answer
toward the
immediately.
cockpit. But the
She
SEAL
flipped a
leader
breaker
stepped
and
in
a
front
small
of her for
panel
a
light
second,
blinked alive.
rifle up, eyes
Enough,
blazing.
she said.
Tell me the truth,
He leaned
said.
closer,
Right
voice
now?
low.
Are you
That's
actually
not an
trained
answer.
to fly this?
Ava's
Ava
jaw
met his
tightened.
stare. They
I'm
didn't
trained
log
to
my
land it,
hours,
she said,
which is the part
they
that
buried
kills
them.
people. The
That
SEAL
answer
leader
hit
stared
him
at
like
her,
a cold
and I felt
slap.
the temperature drop
He didn't
inside
like it,
the cockpit,
but he
even though
believed
it was already
A
freezing.
burst of gunfire
Who
hammered
trained
the
you?
far wall,
He asked,
and a bullet
Ava
ripped through us
paused
for the first
time.
inches from AA's
Then she
head.
said a name.
She ducked
Not
and
a
slid into
famous
the
name.
cockpit again.
Not a
The
dramatic
SEAL
one,
leader
just
shouted
a simple
orders
one.
to his team,
And the SEAL
and
leader's
suddenly,
face
two of them
changed
peeled
so
off
fast
toward
it was
the
like someone
hospital
punched
corridor.
him. They
His
weren't
eyes
abandoning
went
the
glassy
hangar
for half a second,
They were preventing
then
a
hard.
massacre
He's
upstairs.
dead, he whispered.
Ava watched
Ava
them
didn't
go
look
and
away.
felt something
I know,
ugly
she
in her
said,
throat
He
because
died
she knew
making
what
sure
that
I
meant.
could land.
Fewer
Before
guns
the
here,
leader could
less
respond,
time.
the hangar
She
door
shoved
shuddered.
the starter again.
Not from wind,
the engine
from
coughed
impact.
harder this time,
A dull boom
like it wanted to
echoed down
live.
the corridor.
The rotors
then
twitched.
another.
The
Just a
SEAL
twitch.
leader's head snapped
Then the whole
toward the
system
sound.
shuddered and died
His
again.
hand went to his
Ava
rifle
slammed her palm
instinctively.
against the console.
Ava didn't flinch.
Not in rage,
She
but
just
in
kept
focus.
working.
Flipping
Come
another
on,
switch,
she whispered,
trying to coax power
Please.
from a dying
She
system.
reached down and
The
pulled
boom
out the
came
emergency
again,
checklist,
closer this time,
flipping it open like she was
someone
back in
testing the
training.
door.
Her
The SEAL
eyes
leader
scanned
keyed
lines
his
of
radio.
text.
Then she froze.
Static.
One
He
line,
tried again.
one problem,
Nothing.
the fuel feed.
The storm was
It wasn't
swallowing
frozen.
every signal.
It was cut off.
He looked at Ava
Someone
and
had
for the
flipped the
first
valve.
time his voice carried
She stared
real
at the
urgency.
switch and her blood went cold. That wasn't an accident. That was sabotage. Ava's head snapped toward the hangar floor. The SEAL leader was behind a crate, firing in short bursts, keeping 3 smugglers pinned near the door. Another SEAL was reloading, hands slick with blood from his own wound. Nobody had time to touch the fuel valve, which meant someone else had someone already inside. Someone who knew the helicopter. Ava's gaze flicked toward the shadowed corner near the maintenance lockers. And there, half hidden behind hanging coats, was a figure she hadn't noticed before, wearing hospital gear. Not a smuggler, not a SEAL, a staff member, watching the chaos with a blank face. Ava's mouth went dry. In the cockpit, she could see the man's hands. One hand held a radio, the other held a pistol low at his thigh. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't scared. He looked like he'd been waiting for the storm all week. Ava's mind flashed back to one of the smugglers' voices earlier. They're not here for pills. They were here for a reason. A shipment. A prisoner. Something hidden in the hospital. Ava realized with a sick certainty. The storm didn't trap them by accident. It trapped them by design. She keyed the intercom, voice tight, barely a whisper. Chief, she said to the SEAL leader. We've got a traitor in the hangar. The SEAL leader's eyes snapped up toward the cockpit. Ava pointed just slightly. The traitor's pistol lifted. The muzzle aimed straight at her. And in that exact moment, the generator in the hospital finally died, plunging the entire base into darkness. The blackout hit like a punch. 1 second, the hangar had flickering emergency lights, and the next, it was pure Arctic dark, broken only by muzzle flashes and the thin glow of the helicopter's dead dashboard. The traitor's pistol barked once, loud, sharp, and the round shattered the cockpit glass inches from Ava's cheek. She didn't scream. She dropped low in the seat, grabbed the mic, and said the calmest words she'd said all night. He's shooting at the cockpit. He wants the bird grounded. That was all the SEAL leader needed. He didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He turned and fired into the shadowed corner like he'd been born in it. The traitor ran. Not toward the smugglers, not toward the exit. He ran toward the fuel controls because he wasn't trying to win a firefight. He was trying to stop escape. Ava saw him in the strobing flashes and her stomach twisted. This wasn't greed. This was a mission. The SEAL leader and one of the uninjured operators pushed hard, boots pounding, while the injured SEAL dragged himself forward on one knee, still aiming, still covering, refusing to die like the storm had already written his name. Ava climbed out of the cockpit, hit the hangar floor, and sprinted to the fuel valve. Her gloves slipped on the metal. She yanked it open. The engine didn't start yet, but at least now it could. Then the smugglers did something that made the blood drain from every SEAL's face. They stopped firing. For 2 seconds, it was quiet, just wind and breathing. And in that quiet, a voice echoed from the hospital corridor, smug and loud. "Bring the nurse out or we start with the patients." Ava froze. Dr. Harmon, Mara, the people upstairs. The smugglers had reached them. The SEAL leader's jaw tightened so hard it looked like it might crack. He glanced at Ava like he was about to tell her to stay put, but Ava was already moving. She didn't go toward the smugglers. She went back to the cockpit, because she understood the only real play left: fly or everybody dies. The traitor lunged from the shadows one last time, desperate, and grabbed Ava's parka collar from behind. She felt the gun press into her ribs. His breath was hot in her ear. "You don't get to leave," he hissed. Ava didn't fight like a nurse. She fought like someone who'd been taught how to end a problem fast. She stomped his foot, drove her elbow back into his throat, and twisted hard, using his grip against him. He stumbled. The pistol slipped. Before he could recover, the SEAL leader slammed into him like a freight train and pinned him to the concrete and wrenched the weapon away. The traitor screamed, "You don't understand what's in that hospital." The SEAL leader leaned close, eyes cold. "I don't care," he said. "You threaten civilians?" Ava didn't wait for the rest. She climbed into the pilot's seat and flipped switches with shaking fingers that refused to quit. Battery, fuel, starter. She breathed once, then again. The engine coughed and this time it caught. Rough, ugly, but alive. The rotors began to turn. Slow at first, then faster, the sound building into something that felt like hope. The smugglers heard it too. They came running back toward the hangar, firing wildly into the dark, trying to kill the only thing that could lift anyone out of the storm. The SEALs formed a moving shield, firing controlled bursts, dragging the 2 injured men toward the helicopter. One of the injured SEALs collapsed at the skid, and for a terrifying second, it looked like he wouldn't make it. Ava leaned out, grabbed his vest strap with both hands, and hauled, face red, teeth clenched, not stopping until he was inside. The liftoff wasn't cinematic. It was violent. The storm grabbed the helicopter like it hated it. The whole bird bucked and yawed, and Ava's arms burned as she fought the controls. Ice cracked off the windshield. Wind screamed through the frame. One of the SEALs yelled, "We're too heavy." Another yelled, "She's losing altitude." Ava didn't answer. She just flew. She flew by feel, by instinct, by a kind of muscle memory she never wanted back. She kept the nose into the wind. Rode the turbulence like a wave. Sand climbed inch by inch until the hangar lights became a faint blur below them. And then finally, the helicopter broke through the worst of the storm and the sky opened just enough to show them the faint pale line of dawn. When they landed at the forward base, the world looked unreal. Quiet snow, floodlights, medics rushing out, boots crunching, warm air spilling from open doors. Ava stepped down last, legs trembling like she'd run a marathon. The SEAL leader turned to her, and for the first time, his voice softened. "You didn't just fly us out," he said. "You saved the whole damn hospital." Ava swallowed and tried to look away like she always did. But then a black SUV rolled up and a Navy admiral stepped out, older, calm, the kind of presence that made even hardened men straighten without thinking. The admiral didn't look at the SEALs first. He looked straight at Ava. "Ava," he said quietly, like her name wasn't a surprise at all. The SEAL stared. The leader blinked. "Sir, you know her?" The admiral nodded once. "You were never assigned a rookie nurse for luck. He said she was here because I put her here." Ava's throat tightened. The admiral's voice didn't rise, but it hit like thunder for your protection for this exact night. He paused, then added the twist that made every SEAL's face go pale. "And because she's my niece," silence. A pure silence. The admiral's eyes softened just a fraction. "Her father was one of the greatest SEALs I ever served with."